So we're a shoe company. We're selling shoes. When do you think most shoe companies make their sales? Back to school is one time. What might be another time? Holidays, Christmas, right? In fact, most retail stores do 50 to 80% of their business during Christmas, right? I mean, that's just the way it works, all right? So when I go to buy these shoes from my wholesaler, my manufacturer, when does he want me to buy them? Spring. He wants me to buy them anytime. He doesn't really care, right? But normally, if you have a wholesaler who's just cranking out pairs of shoes nonstop, right? When are most of his orders going to come in? Yeah, right before Christmas, right? So you're thinking late fall, early winter. That's when most of his orders will come in that he's got to send out all of his shoes. Is he going to only produce shoes during that time? No, he's going to crank out shoes year round, right? So when would he rather have you buy your shoes from him? Yeah, non-holiday times, like say maybe in the early spring, maybe even like January, February time, right? Because he's still making shoes during then, but is he getting a whole lot of orders from them? No. So what does this guy, this manufacturer, do for me if I decide to order my shoes in March? He gives me a better discount, but the way they do a better discount is they chain it. They give you an additional discount, all right? So chain discounts are when you get additional discounts on top of your regular trade discount. So he may have given me 30%, but then said, tell you what, if you buy in February or March, I'll throw an extra 10% on top of it, all right? The way a chain discount is written, it looks like you're dividing the numbers. This is literally how it looks on contracts, folks. It will say that your trade discount is 30/10. What this means is take a 30% discount and then take a 10% discount afterwards. So you're not getting 10% discount on the original price. You're getting a 10% discount after you've already gotten a 30% discount. All right? All right, now imagine, if you will, in addition, that when this manufacturer sells shoes, he kind of likes to sell them in bulk, right? So if you order more than 100 shoes or more than 100 pair of shoes, what might my manufacturer do for me on top of it? Give me a little bit more, right? So he'll say, well, you know, as long as you order more than 100 pairs of shoes or 100 or more pair of shoes, I'll throw an additional 2% in because I really like it when you make the big orders. The cool part about doing a chain is you can just slap another number on. And that's just another discount. Right? All right, so this is how it generally works. This is not uncommon to have a chain discount of 3 or 4 numbers in a row, right? And again, it's coming from doing business in such a way that you generate better discounts, right? Buying in bulk, potentially using the right shipping company, right? Imagine, if you will, you're buying your goods from China, and that guy who has the shoe factory has a cousin, brother, uncle, nephew who has a shipping company. Guess what he might do? He might say, well, if you use my brother's shipping company, I'll tack another 1% discount off of your sale, right? Again, not uncommon. Nepotism runs the world, folks, so don't be surprised when somebody's brother gives you a better deal because you know them, right? I mean, it's kind of the way you get jobs too, right? Networking, whatever. Anyways, the key to this is my discount, when you add up all these numbers, is my discount 42% off? Why not? Exactly. You're taking a discount off of a discount. And unfortunately, that second discount doesn't go back to the first number, right? It's only going to get taken off of what you've already subtracted. Doesn't work, right? So you don't get a full 42% discount. So my question is, how do you figure out what kind of a discount you got? Yeah, assuming we don't pay for shipping. Right? We keep.
Oh no, I mean like that extra 2% is like saying you're not really paying for shipping.
Something like that, yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
subtract the long and you take the last number you did, which is the net price, and subtract it from the original price.
Right, yeah. So it's a real pain in the butt, right? I mean, we're going to do it the long way once, guys. Once. The long way, it's good to see how annoying it is. But once you've done it the long way, I'm going to show you a shorter way. All right? So let's work with this problem. And instead of getting a 30% trade discount, let's change to a 30-10-2 discount. All right? So my list price is $5,000 still, and now we're going to take 30% off, 10% off, and then 2% off. It's going to be annoying, I promise you. It's okay, but I'll show you the easier way afterwards. Okay, so let's just keep it easier. I don't want to write all that number all the time. All right, so when I get 30% off of 5,000, my discount is $1,500. And my bill is now $3,500. That's just copying what we did right here. Now I'm going to get 10% off of this number. What's 10% of 3,500? $10% of something is 1/10 of it. That's $350. So if I get another additional $350 discount, I subtract that number, $3,150. And then I have to do it one more time. 2% off. What's 2% of 3,150? Somebody do that for me. $63, is that right? Yeah. 0.02 times 3,150. Pretty sure that's 63. Okay. So we got to subtract that one more time. So 3,087. So this is what I'm actually going to pay. So if I'm paying 3,087 and my price started at $5,000, how do I figure out what my real discount was? Subtract and divide, right? So this is my real net price after doing all my discounts, which is annoying, but it's what you do. So my real discount is from $5,000 to $3,087. Quick review of Chapter 6. How do I figure out what the percentage decrease there is? How do you calculate percentage decreases? Start minus end. Take the difference of the two numbers, right? Remember, you always take the difference of the two numbers. Right? What's 5,000 minus 387? What did you say that was? 1913? What do I divide by? Always divide by where you started. Always divide by where you started. So 1913 divided by 50 per 5,000. So it's 0.3862, and then we converted it to a percent by saying it's 38.62%. Notice that, yes, it looks like we're getting a 42% discount. Did we really get a 42% discount? No. All right, so. Well, I mean, the longer the chain, the more discount you're getting, but actually the longer the chain you get, the worse off it is. You'd rather have a 30-12 discount than a 30-10-2 discount. Because when you get that 12% off, you don't have to take the 10% off first. So the more you can combine these two, right? If you got a 42% discount, it would be better than this. So, all right, now, what's the shortcut method? All right? Well, if you take 30% off of something, what do you have left? How could I figure out what my net price was going to be without having to do any of this subtraction crap? Instead of taking 30% and then subtracting, I could have just said, well, what's 70% of 5,000? What is 70% of 5,000? 3,500. That trick works every time you take a discount, right? So one of the things that I like to tell students is that when you start looking at trade discounts, as soon as you see them, write the number that completes that trade discount. So it completes the discount. It's the complement of 30% is 70%. If you multiply your list price times the complement of your discount, you will always get right to your net price. So, when I had $3,500 here and I wanted to take 10% off of it, what could have I done to take that discount quicker? Exactly. The complement of 10% is 90%. So I could have taken 3,500 and just multiplied by 0.9, right? What's the complement of 2%? What completes 2%? 98. Guess what you get when you multiply 5,000 times 0.7 times 0.9 times 0.98? Okay, so all of this multiplying, subtract, multiply, subtract, multiply, subtract, multiply, subtract crap, I don't want you to do it. You can. There's nothing wrong with it, right? You guys know what a percent decrease is. If you want to do it the long way, you can forever do it the long way. I got no problems with it, okay? The problem with it is that that's slow and annoying. This is the easy way to do it. And if you've looked at the homework, it talks about this frickin' net price equivalent rate thinger. These products of all of your complements of your discounts, that is your net price equivalent rate, okay? And what it does is it gives you one number that you can multiply your list price by to get your net price. That's why they call it the net price equivalent rate. It's one number you can multiply list price by to get you right to net price. All right, so oh, crap, did I erase it? Damn. Remember what our discount was 38.62%. So what I'd like you guys to do is tell me what this rate is. Multiply those numbers.
28.26%.
No, add these, multiply these three numbers, just these three. Was it? I thought it was 38 point. It was 38.62? 26. Sorry.
Well, I don't know. I'm just
38.62.
62? Okay.
Whatever.
So when you multiply these two numbers, when you multiply these three decimals together, what do you get?
I don't like being wrong.
This is 0.6174. Right? That's what our net price equivalent rate is. All right? Take 1 minus that number. What is 1 minus 0.6714?
26.
If I could write the number down right myself. 6174. 3826. So that's really 26, not 62. You guys got it in your notes. I erased it. Note. Did I dyslexic? Change it for yourselves. So what you notice is that if you take 1 minus the net price equivalent rate, what you get is what your discount really was. And again, this has a special name. This is the single equivalent discount rate. And again, it's a way for you to figure out what the trade discount is by just multiplying your list price times one number. All right? Now, this is sort of a lot to throw at you right away, but let's do an example and see how it works. All right, so let's keep the numbers easy. So let's buy $10,000 worth of goods. 10,000's a nice, safe number, right? And I get a 45, that's a 5, I swear, 3 discount. And this is literally how it will be phrased in a contract, right? You get a 40/5/3 discount, all right? And now I can ask technically 5 questions. I can ask for the list price. List price is, what's the list price on this problem, folks? That would be if I were, I would ask this question if I were being a nice guy, because it's as obvious as you think it is, right? Okay, so. All right, the other 2 things that I can now add to the calculation are the net price equivalent rate, the single equivalent discount rate, and then, of course, the 2 things that we're always asking for, trade discount amount and net price. That's a C. So when you guys see that change showing up in a problem, stop. Don't even start calculating numbers. Stop, get out some different colored pencil or pen, and write on the problem. What's the complement of 40? 60. Again, add the numbers, make sure they add up to 100. Complement of 5? 95. Add the numbers, make sure they add up to 100. Complement of 3? 97. So, how do I calculate the net price equivalent rate? Multiply them, except make sure they're decimals, okay? So make sure that you convert this 60 into 0.60. You don't have to put the 0 down. Times 0.95 and times 0.97. So your net price equivalent rate is always just the product of your complements. And what's that number? 5529. All right, so what's my real discount for that 40/5/3 discount? 1 minus that number, right? So you would tell me here that this was this 40/5/3 discount is the same as a 44.71% discount. Yes, please leave it in that form. When I ask for a rate, that means I don't want it as a percent, okay? Rates, don't change them to percents, okay? You can if you want to. It's not wrong if you change it to a percent, but it's kind of silly to do it, all right? So how are you going to calculate what your trade discount amount is now that you guys know a little bit of, information here? So which one of these two gives you the trade discount amount? The list price, 10,000, times whatever your discount rate is, right? Or your single equivalent discount rate. $4,471 are saved. What do we actually pay? You can do it using subtraction if you want, but again, that's what this rate is for, right? It's a way for you to get the net price in one step, right? Just take whatever your list price is times that rate. So if you get a big long chain, don't spend a whole buttload of time multiplying and subtracting, right? You can do it if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to check your answer, it's maybe not necessarily a bad thing to do, but that defeats the purpose, right? Simplify your life. All right, so let's do one more just to be safe. I go to Kohl's. I buy a coat for $150. It is on a 40% off rack, and I have the magic 30% off coupon. This is how you shop at Kohl's, right? All right? Now, so in other words, the way Kohl's does it, this is exactly the way Kohl's does it, right? Is that they're going to take 40% off of the coat, and then when you get to the cash register with your coupon, they're going to take 30% off of that price after the 40% off. So they're actually chaining your 40 and your 30% discount. So what do you think you're getting off on this coat? Getting 70% off. What's your real discount? So here are my questions. What is the real discount rate written as one number instead of these 2% off numbers? And then, of course, what did I pay? So these chain discount things, normally they apply to businesses when you're buying wholesale products. But the part about it is it's happening to you every day, right? Well, hopefully you don't go to Kohl's every day, but If you get the 30% off coupon, you do, right? I mean, come on. All right, so how are we going to go about doing this, right? The cool thing is you just do the same dumb thing, right? What was the list price of my coat? Okay. What am I going to calculate next? Right, you're going to look up here and say, I know the complement of 40% is 60. What's the complement of 30%? 70. So the net price equivalent rate is the product of those two complements, right? .60 times 0.70. I can do that one. What's my single equivalent discount rate? 1 minus that number. And what does this number represent? That's your actual discount, right? So am I getting 70% off when I get 40 and 30 and then 30%? You're not even getting 60% off, folks, right? So this is a 58% discount. Kohl's counts on you screwing that up, right? They want you to think you're getting 70% off because that means you're going to buy more stuff, right? Because 70% off, that's great. But if it's only really 58% off, well, I mean, that's still good, but is it great? Are you going to buy 2 of those items at 58% off? Probably not, right? But Kohl's counts on you being bad at math. All businesses do, folks. All of them. All right. So, again, what did we actually pay for this? Again, remember, use the net price equivalent rate to figure out what you actually pay for it. What is that? 63? 63 bucks, right? So you were thinking you were getting 70% off. You think you were going to only end up paying like about $50 for that coat. Try again. All right, so I like these 2 problems because 1, it's the buyer in all of us, and 2, this is the business owner, right? Just remember that those chain discounts, you don't just add the numbers. You got to play this little game. All right, so any questions on chain discounts? All right, again, one thing let me note and reiterate again, do not round these numbers, okay? When you are getting net price equivalent rates and single equivalent discount rates, if there are 6 digits in the number, leave all 6 digits, okay? Don't round it to the 10,000ths or something like that. Do not round anything inside of there. If you do, you're going to get wrong answers, period. Okay? All right. I love that Kohl's example. It works on my wife. She's like, I got 70% off, but that doesn't look like 70%. I'm like, oh. You would think the wife of a math teacher would get it. That's why there's wine at home. Mm-hmm. Of course, then she just tells me, well, you should do the shopping. Then I'm like, oh, God. I would come back with something that was, everything. She'd be wearing blue all the time. That doesn't go over well with my. Well, anyways, okay. So. All right. So, I get a 33.11.7 discount. I paid $4,122.53 for some goods. What was the list price of those goods? This is how much I paid for it. That's the net price. No, I want to know what's my list price. So in other words, what were those goods before I got my discount? We got to go backwards. Backwards always sucks, folks, because you can't see where you're going unless you're really flexible. Very few of us can do the 360 with the neck thing. And if you can do it, I don't want to know. All right, so the key here is realizing that you have this formula, right? The net price, we can calculate the net price. It's the list price times the net price equivalent rate, right? But that was the whole point of us calculating these net price equivalent rates, is so that we could just multiply one number times the list price to get to the net price, right? Well, if we have the net price and we need to get to the list price, what do I have to do to get the list price by itself? Divide, right? So the cool thing about it is you can say, and instead of multiplying, I just have to divide. Right, that's, again, this is a quick review of Chapter 5, right? If you have 6 equals 2x, what do you got to do to get the x by itself? Divide by the 2. Same sort of concept here, all right? So, what was my net price? $22.53. Now all I have to do is figure out what my net price equivalent rate is. How do I figure out what that is? You guys probably did this before I did. Because as soon as you saw this chain discount, what did you guys do? What'd you write here? 67, 89, 93. Because now you can say, ooh, .67 times 0.89 times 0.93. So multiply those nasty boys together. What do we get? 554,559. So now all we have to do is take that number, slap it in there as our division, right? 0.554559. And what a problem that looked like it was going to be really, 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 really hairy turns out to be not so bad. So what was my list price? Did it make it to 10 grand? Probably not. 7, 8? 89 cents? 888, yep, round it to the nearest penny, so round it up. So this is what my list price of my goods was, okay? So again, once you get nice, easy equations, solving for any one of those is nice, right? When it's just this A equals B times C, you can go back and forth as you need to relatively easily. So that's the other reason why I'm trying to convince you guys that this is a good idea to do, right? Because it makes going backwards tons easier, all right? All right, so let's make sure I'm not skipping anything. All right, so when you are buying goods from your wholesaler, so I owed him this much money. When does he want me to pay that money? As soon as possible, right? I mean, he wants his money right now. How long do I normally have to pay that bill, though? Well, it's even bigger than that for these kinds of 90 days. Yeah, usually it's 90 days for these things. It kind of depends on how you negotiate your contracts, but usually you have 90 days. So me as a buyer, right, when do I want to pay this money? Yeah, I want to wait till the 89th frickin' day to pay it. Okay, so what does the manufacturer do to try and convince me to pay earlier? More discounts. Awesome. All right, so early payment / cash payment discounts. So the other things that that businesses might do is they might say, well, as long as you buy it, pay for it up front, right? Because in theory, I could pay this early, but if I use my credit card to pay the bill, what does the supplier have to do? They got to pay the 2% credit card fee, or 3% credit card, one of the nasty ones, right? They don't like that, right? So they'd much rather have you send them a check, do an electronic transfer of funds directly so that, money's right there right now. All right, so these are called terms in a contract. The terms of a contract are just what kind of a discount are you going to get on top of your trade discount that represents early payment discounts. All right. So my favorite story about this example was that I had a student, first semester I taught this class, first semester I taught here in the school, who was running the books for a business. She was an okay accountant, right? She knew how to put numbers into the ledgers, and she was really good about that. But she was really bad at math and didn't really understand contract law. So what the owner of the business would get a bill. As soon as you get it, write the check for the bill, but always take 2% off. Always, right? And that was because they had a contract. They had terms on all of their contracts that stated, as long as you paid within the first 10 days, we'll give you a 2% discount. And so she's like, okay, fine. So what she did before she wrote the check for every bill was she took 2% off, and she did it the long way, folks. She took 2% and then subtracted instead of doing the short way, which you guys know, multiply by 0.98, right? That was the first thing she was excited about. And then she discovered that, oh, there's actually something in the contract that tells you get to do this, all right? So she hadn't said a word in class for 6 weeks until she said that. She went, oh! It was really funny. First time teaching, I'm trying not to laugh at her because she was sitting in the back corner. She had never said a word. I'd said hi every day and then didn't even say hi back, just looked down. I was like, whoa. So I was trying to keep my distance, but I have a personality. Enough said. Anyways, so after that it got a little better. All right, so terms in a contract. They are written like this. 2/10, 1/20, N/90. All right, so again, it looks very similar to the chain discount stuff, but this comes after the phrase terms, okay? And it will look very similar to this. The idea here is that each segment represents a type of a discount. This set, you get a 2% discount if you pay within 10 days. And the 10th day is inclusive, folks. So if it's 10 days after the date, that's good enough, okay? So this, again, the first number is always the discount. This is a 1% discount if you pay within the first 20 days, but please note that it's not additional, right? So if you miss the 2% discount, you still have a chance to hit the 1% discount. And then this is just telling you when everything is due, right? The N stands for net, the rest. And again, it's due in 90 days. And if you do not pay your bill in 90 days, what starts to happen? Fees, interest charges, potential lawyer contracts, blah, 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 blah. All the nasty stuff that happens when you don't pay your bills on time. Depending on the type of business you run, you will start to learn how much the end of your pinky is worth. Or how much an entire finger is worth. Or how much an entire hand is worth. Be careful if you get into the wrong kind of business. Pay your bills. All right. So, the cool thing about it is that there are 3 ways that this is written. All right, 3 types. There is standard technique. Days are calculated, did I spell it right? Yes. From the invoice date. So the important date when you have a standard form of your terms, which looks like this, is that date, these days, are from the invoice date. And the invoice date, folks, is when the invoice is created. When a company sends you goods, they ship them to you, what do on the same day? Yeah, they create the invoice date and send you the statement, right? They probably email it to you, or maybe they FedEx it to you, or whatever. The invoice date is there. It's already coming, right? It's starting to count. Now, the problem, of course, is that your goods are not going to get there as fast as the invoice, right? Are you guys going to pay an invoice before you get the goods? Usually not. Again, this woman who was in my class, she did. Because as soon as she got the statement, she's like, all right, write the check. Whew, there it goes. A little weird, but it worked for them. They trusted their supplier, right? Another type that you have is called ROG. So if standard bases things off of the invoice date, guess what some companies want to, avoid worrying about is shipping. So instead, they base their terms off of when they receive the goods, right? So ROG is receive of goods, or it's receipt of goods. That's the business term for it. Everything works the same, except your days are calculated from when you receive the goods instead of from the invoice date. Days are calculated from date you receive goods. That's the second way. 1, 2. And our third way is EOM. Anybody got to guess what EOM stands for? End of month, yeah. The end of month terms were created because some businesses have lots and lots of suppliers, and what they wanted to do was to always write their checks for all of the payments of their goods on the same day. So they said, well, I want to pay on the 10th of every month all of my accounts payable, right? Just pay all the bills at the same time. Hop on the computer, get onto your banking statements and say, okay, pay this bill. There goes the money. Get the next one. Pay the bill. There it goes. And so what they did is they created this type of term where your days days are calculated from the last day of invoice month. So whatever month the invoice is in, you go to the last day of that month, and then however many days after that date, that's when you need to pay it by to get your discount. All right? Again, though, this is just another discount, folks. It's just a tack-on discount, but now you have to worry about days. So we have to worry about the calendar, which is, because you guys have to remember, right? You know, April, June, upside down December makes November, run around November, and June comes after September when it's the odd year, whatever, right? You have to remember how many days are in a month. Because if your invoice date is May 29th, what's 10 days after May 29th? Well, are there 30 days in May or 31? You have to be able to remember that kind of crap. Again, note card. If you don't have a way to remember those dates, I mean, some people do the whole knuckle thing, or if you remember the little rhyme or whatever, cool. Just realize you do have to do that, because you have to figure out how many days there are between a day and another day. The top of the knuckle is the 31 days. So January has 31, February, March has 31, April, May has 31, June, July has 31, August has 31, September, October has 31, December has 31. So it's sort of a neat little trick. Okay, so again, I could never remember the rhyme singer, so I was just like, what? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's keep it easy. I buy $1,000 of goods. I get the coals. With terms of, let's just do that. Terms right there, 210, 120, and 90. Now, when you start getting terms, I need to give you two additional things, the invoice date and the date you received your goods. So once you start getting into these date set stuff, I will throw in that the invoice date was March 20th last year. So I pulled out all of my bills from last year, and I'm taking a peek at them. Let's suppose I received my goods on the 25th of 2013. Again, I could ask you a whole bunch of stuff like what's the list price, what's the net price, what's the trade discount amount, what's the net price equivalent rate, et cetera, et cetera. All those are fair. But in this particular problem, if I pay on 4/2/13, what do I write the check for? That's all I want to know. So you can go through all those other numbers if you want to, but in this problem, all I give a crap about is what did I pay? All right, so. That's why you got to see the examples as they grow and grow and grow. Everything is building on top of itself, right? Because the first thing you have to worry about is your trade discount, right? As soon as you see this trade discount, you're going to say, 60, 70, right? So my advice to you is to still kind of go through the steps. You don't have to. You can jump right to the answer if you want. But my advice is to say, okay. What's my list price? $1,000, right? Again, think of this as a test question, And you're getting points by writing down that the list price is $1,000, right? Never hurts to take free points in the off chance that you screw something up afterwards, right? How am I going to figure out my net price? You're going to take your list price, and you're going to multiply essentially by your net price equivalent rate, which is just the product of all of your discounts. So if you want, you can figure out what this number is. But that, if I don't ask for it, you don't necessarily have to calculate it. That's okay. All right, so how much am I paying for this? If I waited until the 90th day to pay for these goods, I would pay $420. I paid on April 2nd, though. First off, which date am I using? If there's nothing after the you're using the standard format. So these three letters, these are the letters that show up after your terms to indicate the other types. Okay? We'll do examples of those too. So this is standard form, so your calculation is from the invoice date. So one of the things I like to tell students as well is that when you do these problems, as soon as you see the type of terms you have, right? These are standard. What's the important date? The invoice date. What are you going to do with your receive of good dates? Nothing. Cross it off so you don't accidentally use it. All right? I'm always going to give you both dates, always, okay? You have to know which one to use. If you screw it up, well, the way to not screw it up is to look at your terms and say, oh, there's nothing coming after my N90. That's standard. The only date I care about is the invoice date. So, I'm paying on April 2nd. How many days is that after March 20th? 13. Well, the way I tend to do it is it within 10 days? No. Go to the next one. Is it within 20 days? Yes, that's good enough for me. You can figure out the exact number of days. If it's close, then you have to, right? And probably on the test, you'll have to. So I am going to get an additional 1% discount. Get a 1% early pay discount. How am I going to take 1% off of that number? Yeah, multiply by 0.99. You can slip back into the old way if you want, but you don't have to, right? Right, because 99 is the complement of 1. So what's 420 times 0.99? 417 something? 415.80. So you will write a check for $415.80 to pay off this $420 bill. All right? And normally in business, right, they're not going to give you these numbers, right? So if you wrote a check on April 2nd for $420, you better believe it, folks. Well, I mean, they'll have to actually keep the fact that you have $4.20 on credit at the account, but yeah, you have to know, right? These early payment discounts are on you, period. All right, so let's try one that's not standard. Okay, so well, let's make it a little bit more interesting. 5,000 instead of 1,000. Woohoo! I get a 38, 14, 3 discount. A little bit more interesting. With terms of 2/10 N/90 ROG. So this is the way the terms will look when you're using receipt of goods types, okay? There will be this ROG at the end of your terms, okay? And again, note that sometimes you have 3 terms, sometimes you only have 2. Again, it depends on how well you negotiate your contract, right? It's not uncommon when you use receipt of goods to have these numbers be less and have less of them, okay? Because now the responsibility of shipping is their responsibility instead of yours, right? When you're dealing it from the invoice date, there's always that lag that comes from shipping, and that makes it less likely that you'll reach that first term in your discount. It's often why they'll have 2, okay? Again, these are negotiable things, right? You negotiate these things at the beginning of your relationship with your supplier, and then you have to live with them the rest of your relationship. It's like any relationship. You got to live with it for as long as it lasts. Good or bad. All right, so I will still give you the invoice date of, let's go with April 26th. Receive your goods on May 3rd. I'll always give you both of those. And my question will be, how much do you pay on May 12th? Okay, let's do this in one step this time. One step. Because you guys like to just do the answer right away, right? That's the way you guys always want to do your math problems. It's like, I should just be able to do something and then be done and go on to the next one. So let's do it that way. So what is my net price going to start off with? Yeah, the fact that our list price is $5,000, okay. And what am I going to multiply first? 0.62 times 0.86 times 0.97. Where did these numbers come from? Complements, right? Because you guys probably, as soon as you wrote this problem down, did that. These would be the net price equivalent, the multiplication of those 3. Now, am I getting an early payment discount on this payment? Since it's ROG, which date is important? Receipt of goods dates. What are you going to do with the invoice date? Okay, good idea. I'm destroying this pen. It's crap already. So, I get a 2% discount if I'm within 10 days. Those are 9 days. That's early enough. How do I give myself a 2% discount up here? Yeah, do another 0.98. So this is your net price equivalent. This is your early payment discount, and it's just one quick multiplication. It's a little nasty because you got to multiply all those numbers.
So you don't need to multiply the net price equivalent together
Yeah, you can just do them all in one step. Yep. Because note, I could have done that over here, right? I could have just said times 0.6 times 0.7 times 0.99, and I would have still wound up with the same number. So how much did I pay? What was my check? $0.40? Okay. 30 cents? Okay. All right, 5,000 times 0.62 times 0.86 times 0.97 times 0.98. I get 25, 34, 30. Okay. It's 2,996, again, round appropriately to the nearest penny. So not quite half off, but pretty darn close. All right, so that's ROG. End of month is tricky, folks. And there's an additional rule to it. So bear with me a little bit as I do this one. All right, so let's keep the numbers real easy for this. I buy $1,000 of goods with a 25% discount. So it's not even chained. It's just straight old 25%. With terms 2/10 N/45 EOM. Your net date, generally don't worry too terribly much about it. But EOM says I'm using end of month. All right. My invoice date was, let's go with May 20th, 2013, and I receive my goods June 3rd, 2013. Oh no, we're always going to use one of them. You got to use one of them. It's just that the days won't matter because all we care about is the month. All right? Now, EOM, folks, it's based off of the invoice month, not the receipt of goods month. Okay? So still do the same thing. When you have EOM, it's invoice date driven. Scratch out the receipt of goods date. Okay? You are not going to use that date. It's there, but for billing purposes, we are not using it. Okay? And obviously it makes a big difference, right? Because one month is in May, the other one's in June. All right, so when you're using end of month, you go to your invoice date, look at the month, and then instead of using the 20th of that month, use the last day of the month. What's the last day? That's the real date you're going to use to determine when you get your discount. All right? So if I pay on June 13th, 2013, how much do I pay? Yes, 10 days from the end of the month. So it will always be the 10th of the next month. Okay. I mean, that's the idea behind it, right? And again, this is so that a company, when it gets a bill that it has to pay, it can just put it into a specific, slot and say, these are the bills that have to get paid in June. So you put it in the June pile, and on June 10th, the accounts payable person, their only job on June 10th is always grab all of the bills out of the June stack and pay them. and guarantee that you get your 2%. Now for this problem, when did we pay? June 13th. Did we get a discount? No. Okay. Yeah, you still get your trade discount, folks. You just don't get your early payment 2% discount. Please don't forget you get the trade discount, okay? How would I figure out what my pay is? Times 0.75, right? So technically, I'd write my check for $750. So I just wanted to do one example where I didn't pay in time. Because it can happen. Right? Stuff happens. Now, I told you that there was a trick to dealing with the end of month terms, and the trick is rule of 25th. If the invoice date is after the 25th, you get a bonus month. If the date of the invoice is after the 25th, add an entire extra month. Okay? So what was going on when they first came up with this rule so that businesses could pay on the 10th all the time is that suppliers, what they did when they created their invoice and sent and shipped goods, guess what they did? They always sent them on the last day of the month. Because then it would usually take, 10 to 15 days to ship. And if it takes 10 to 15 days to ship and you always ship it on the last day of the month, do you ever have to deal with that 2% discount? Nope. They were sneaky. Businesses will be sneaky if they can, folks. That's what profit is all about, being sneaky, right? So just realize that if this number had been the 28th instead of the 20th, we would have gotten our 2% discount on this payment. Because technically, our end of month, it's not the May month, we'll actually use one additional month on top of that, okay? So if this is 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, or 31, basically add a month and then go to the end of that month and get 10 days after it, okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just realize that that's the way it works. And again, this stopped businesses from always shipping on the last day of the month, right? All right. So imagine, if you will, we'll do one last example. And the reason why is because it points out the last topic we got to cover on this in this chapter. So let's create some terms. So I buy, let's go with $5,000 of goods again. Let's keep the discount relatively easy with a 2015 discount. And terms of 210, 120, and 90, and let's leave them standard. So none of this ROG, EOM crap. I still have to give you invoice dates and receive goods dates. Whatever. Goods showed up a week later. All right, so I'm going to ask you, just for kicks and giggles, to give me list price price and check amount if I pay on 6/18/13. So I want to know these three numbers this time. Again, it's fair game on any of these questions for me to ask all of the different stuff that we've been, asked before. So on your homework, the book's pretty good about asking various different things, so run with it. All right, so what's my list price? Right. Take your free points when you get them. Net price? Times 0.8 times 0.85. 3,400. All right, so on June 18th, if I paid this off, how much would I need to pay? What was that number again?
$3,332.
Now imagine, if you will, that you are the accounts payable person, and on the 18th you sit down in front of your computer and you log into your bank account and you're going to transfer to your supplier $3,332, and you don't have that much. Right, suppose there's only $1,000 in the account. Normally, when you go to pay bills, your business partners transfer enough money in this account so that you can pay. This is the only account you have access to. That's very similar to the way businesses work, right? The accounts payable person has access to an account where they pay bills from. There's a separate account where all the money sits and hopefully earns better interest, okay? Doesn't happen as much, but we only have $1,000. So what do you do? You pay a portion of it, right? Or you could say, well, screw it, I'm going to pay nothing. If I can't pay it in full, I don't bother. But the problem with not paying it is that how many more days do you got to get this 2% discount? You got 2 days left. Suppose it's a Friday. It's not that big a deal, but if you go up to your boss and tell him, by the way, I pissed away $8, what's your boss going to say? Give me my $8, right? Shouldn't be your responsibility, but let's face it, folks, shit rolls downhill. If you're at the bottom of the hill, it's going to wind up on you. All right, so let's suppose that you say, you're like, look, I'm going to document all this stuff, right? So that when the boss gets pissed, it's not your fault, right? But, well, true. But the fact remains is that you're going to send that $1,000 to the payer, all right? And the key here is that you should still get your 2% discount on this $1,000 payment. Now, what does a 2% discount mean? What it means is that every time you pay 98 cents, you get $1 taken off your bill, right? Basically, 98 cents equals $1, all right? So what you need to do is say, in this $1,000, how many piles of 98 cents are there? Because that's how many dollars you will subtract from the statement, right? That's how much you will have paid, essentially. Because every 98 cents pays $1. So, how are you going to divide, hint, 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 $1,000 into piles of 98 cents? You're going to divide $1,000 into 98-cent piles. How do you divide something up into units? if you have $1 and you're going to divide it into 10-cent pieces, how many are there? There's 10, because you're going to take $1 and divide it by 0.1. 1 divided by 0.1 is 10. Hence, there are 10 dimes in a dollar. You guys know that. How many of you know what a 98-cent piece looks like? Not a whole lot of us, right? Anyways, though, the key is realizing that this $1,000 equals 1,000 divided by 8 cents worth of payment, because every 98 cents is going to be $1, right? So if you take 1,000 and divide it by 0.98, no, it's right. It just looks weird. $1,020.40. So what most students do when they think they got a 2% discount is they'll say, oh, take 2% of 1,000 and add it to 1,000. 2% of 1,000 is 20 bucks. Screwed yourself out of 40 cents, which 40 cents, no biggie, right? But that's because this is a $1,000 payment. What if this was a $1 million payment? What's 1,000 times 40 cents? That's 400 bucks. How many of you guys are going to piss away 400 bucks? Again, if you don't get the right amount of money, it's going to come out of your paycheck, right? So if you have a business that's making, $1 million payments, which is not uncommon, right? I mean, that's part of business, right? You divide. So the key here is realizing that when you get partial payments, in order to determine how much you take off the bill, divide by the complement of your discount. So I'm going to write it down just to be safe. Partial payments are worth the amount of money divided did I spell it right? Yeah. Divided by the complement of your discount. The other thing you've got to be careful of is remembering how much you actually owe for this bill, right? When we made that a $1,000 payment, did we pay off everything? No. Don't go back to the amount of money that represents how much you pay if you pay everything, right? So if you want to know how much is due, how much is due after this $1,000 payment? You got to go back to the $3,400. Don't go back to that $3,332. That's what you pay if you paid in full and got a 2% discount, right? Don't give yourself a 2% discount if you don't pay for all of it. That might get you in trouble. All right? So for this particular problem, you would have to go back to the $3,400 and subtract the $1,020.40 that your $1,000 payment was worth. All right? So what is that? $23.79.60. So technically, after we make this $1,000 payment, we still owe $2,379.60. Okay? Well, no, we're not late yet, right? We're still paying. This is paying within 10 days of the statement. We're not late. All right? So we did this $1,000 payment on the 18th. That was our Friday. On Monday, we roll into the office and we tell the boss, transfer money into the account. Boss says, oops, my bad. Drops, 20 grand into that account and says, okay, great, go pay the rest of that bill. How much do you owe? Technically, we owe 23, but when are we paying? 21st. What kind of a discount do we get on the 21st? Make sure you take your 1%. Right? So the discounting period lasts the entire time, okay? As long as you keep posting partial payments, every partial payment gets whatever discount it is on that date, period. But again, when you pay in full, folks, don't divide, multiply. Right, that's the last thing before you call it a day for Chapter 7, is that partial payments you divide by the complement. Full payments, don't forget, go back to your normal way. Multiply by the complement. Because if you divide by that complement, you're going to pay more, which that would be silly. If you're getting a discount, you don't pay more, you pay less. So, what was this number? 23 something? 0.8? So that's how much you'd actually transfer to your payer or write the check of on that last date. All right. That's Chapter 7, folks. Homework, all the evens, end of the chapter. Go over it on Monday, due on Wednesday. Please note, test in 2 weeks. That's the Wednesday before spring break. Better before than after, because that means there will be nothing to do over spring break. Did you turn me off, Joe? Well, from me, how's that?